here we go today for this topic of conflict. And I have a wonderful lady here with me who was so gracious to make herself available for a sticky subject like conflict. That you are from the Karoo in the Northern Cape. So is that a place where you would advise other people to move to if they want some peace and quiet?
Oh yes, for sure. It's a place that really it does wonders for your soul, if I can put it that way. It's very, very challenging, but extremely rewarding and peaceful and beautiful. Quite contrary to what I used to think of the place.
Yes, you make it actually sound attractive, even though it's so hot over there. But maybe from that perspective of extreme heat, it does develop a new appreciation for other aspects of life that, at least take you away from the city. Today, I want to just welcome you to the conversation and thank you, Yvonne, for being a part of this journey that we are on regarding communication. Yvonne is also a member of the Female Entrepreneurs Collective, and Yvonne is happily married. She's a stay-at-home mom and a mother of 2. Yvonne is an introvert. And being an introvert, Yvonne, you are going to be able to give a completely different perspective on conflict than I will, because I am an extrovert. With introverts, the fear of conflict is stronger than with extroverts. So it's going to be an interesting conversation.
I think so.
Without making it complicated, conflict means opposing views or needs. And in terms of communication, conflict begins internally before it is visible externally. And between people, the conflict usually starts off when there is an opposition or a threat or a different direction taken by either one of the parties in terms of a value system. And we don't think about this consciously, it just happens. It's just part of the automated system of communication. Our hearing, what we see in body language, how we view the person and what we think about the person, or even our comfort level within the environment where the communication is taking place has an effect. And conflict takes place inside of us, but eventually it's also evident on the outside. So, Yvonne, I'd like to chat to you specifically about the outer conflict between people. None of us really want to have conflict with anyone else. You don't get up in the morning and decide, oh, wow, now I'm awake. I can actually go and visit other people and have conflict with them. But even with the best intentions, these things do happen.
Yeah.
The question is, when does conflict begin? And I want to hand this question over to Yvonne, because there has to be a starting point somewhere. Conflict is not conflict by the time that people are upset. Conflict has to start somewhere before that. And that's what we want to get to today. So what would you say about that?
Problems start when people view conflict as a negative in the first place. A negative mindset already exists, and therefore it is triggered. And I can vouch for that particular statement. Okay,
that's very interesting. If I reflect on my own life, I can't really identify with this statement. I can identify it if I think of a person that I don't get along with well, or that I haven't had the best sort of communication experiences with, and then I probably would have a negative mindset. But in general, I don't view conflict as a negative thing. I see it as an opportunity for resolution and for new possibilities, new opportunities, new newness. So I embrace it, and I do realize, as you and I have discussed, that within communication, different temperament approaches communication from different vantage points. And in terms of conflict, it seems to be that extroverts are more prone to embracing conflict as a way of acknowledging that there's a difference and then seeking a solution. Perhaps acknowledging the fact that you didn't realize there was a difference in the first place, but conflict brings it out, which is a good thing, because otherwise, how do you know which direction to take or which shifts to make? But from an introvert's perspective, it seems that conflict is a negative, and that's it. It is negative, we don't want it. We would rather try to avoid it then from an introvert side. And how does that actually play out? Because a solution still needs to be found and relationships still need to grow. Things that do actually trigger this negative mindset. How did you experience it in your life? Things like fear of conflict, suspicion, issues of trust, any of those, from your perspective, where does this negative mindset come from and what role does it play in beginning conflict?
A negative mindset already exists. You speaking from an extrovert perspective, and it's amazing to hear it, because it's bizarre to me, because from an introvert perspective, it makes absolutely no sense. The constant sort of fear of this conflict, it's a very, very real thing. Them becoming suspicious. What is the person's motives? The sort of the inner turmoil that sort of accompanies these sorts of thoughts as well. Not being able to trust and immediately thinking that I'm under attack. What I'm saying, or what I believe, or the way I see it or perceive something is, it's wrong. It's wrong because there's difference, which is actually ludicrous. It's in just like taking a step back and looking at it objectively, it makes absolutely no sense, because it's just a difference of views, and that's all it is. It's nothing more than that. But the amounts of anxiety associated with the fear of conflict, for instance, it can be overwhelming at times, and sort of, wanting to be accepted or wanting to be okay in somebody's head is extremely important, to be acknowledged. So if my opinion differs, I might be rejected. I might be not welcome or wanted. So, there's all of that goes into that. The listening skills. So my relationship with my husband, there's many times I'll say to him, you said X, Y, Z, but I need you to understand that I just heard something completely different. I heard A, B, C. What are you saying? So it can be really, really difficult, because I hear something completely different, because I'm reading into it. I am suspicious. I've got issues with trust. What is this person actually trying to say to me?
Right. So that helps us a lot. What you've just said is really helpful, because you at least mentioned now that there's a reflective question that comes into your conversation when you feel you're having conflict, or when you experience conflict. And that reflective question allows for the back and forth to become more productive, so that you can at least say what you believe you heard, and allow the person to say, no, that's not what I meant. I said what you heard, but I meant something else. And then that can help bring both of you to clarity, right?
Yes.
But
Yes.
an important thing that you touched on now was the issue of trust. Where does that start? If you are the introvert and if you have a negative mindset towards conflict, why would there be a low form of trust in the first place? So if you and I were speaking, would I have had to have hurt you and disappointed you, etc., in the past to qualify for you to distrust me when we are in conversation and it seems to be leading towards a conflict? Or are you saying that the lower form of trust is there anyway, that it's part of the mindset with which you approach conflict?
I think that the sort of trust would come in perhaps more on a very, very personal level. So having a conversation or a conflicting conversation with somebody I am fairly close to. A complete stranger wouldn't be able to damage or hurt any trust. There's no trust there. There's just face value. So I think the first point that you made, so the fact that perhaps in the past something's already happened, and it perhaps isn't even between you and I. It could be you and I have gotten close, and you then do something that triggers something that has happened, and it then causes this issue of trust.
Right. So something is triggered in your memory and then it becomes part of the conversation, although it has nothing to do with the person you're talking to. So it clouds your ability to trust the individual. Is that what you're saying? Right.
Yes.
That's very important. Shows you how much is going on in our mind while we're using our ears and our mouth and our voice and our eyes. But there's a whole world of its own running a movie here in the background, okay, in the mind.
Exactly. In growing up, I went to, I think, 4 different schools, and I'd always have to sort of pick up and make a new friend. The problem is I was an introvert and extremely shy and extremely sensitive. So I was generally alone until somebody felt sorry for me and would befriend me. I ended up making like very good friends, but it was always just one, one friend, one best friend. And then a couple of years went on, and I was now a grown woman, and I was working, and I became very close with a lady. And we, she was valuable to me because I could spend time with her, and we could talk, and we could be personal, speak about our personal issues and what we liked, what we didn't like. And she became really close. And she then said to me, she wants to go on like a working holiday to the United States. And I couldn't actually deal with it. And instead of being able to tell her that it's going to be very difficult to have to now make another friend, I completely shut off. Wow. And I didn't, I just became quiet, and she didn't know how to sort of interpret that. And she, we ended up having a massive fallout, and all I was doing was I didn't know how else to deal with the situation. And when I told her that, she said, well, let's just agree to sort of leave things as they are. And that was it. And that was the end of the friendship. It was heartbreaking. And then she didn't end up going to you. And that was the worst part, that the damage was done. I had done mine because I reacted the way I did. And with her not having an understanding of why I had reacted that way and how deeply hurt I was by it, she didn't handle it any better than I did. And a perfectly good friendship went down the tubes, which was quite heartbreaking.
That is heartbreaking. It is sad. And in fact, you were defending yourself by closing off your boundaries. You were actually pushing her away to prevent yourself from being hurt by the seeming, here we go, the seeming rejection, the seeming abandonment.
Yes.
That is really precious. Thank you for sharing that very personal example. And you know, it's not about a marriage and a divorce, but it's about a loss of friendship, which is the end of a relationship. And
Yes.
that's what happens often, even in marriage and with a divorce. Or sometimes it's the way we end our work contract, or the way we leave a company. You know, there was room for objectivity. There was room for more communication. Bridge could have been built, but it wasn't.
Yeah.
Okay, but the underlying issue that you mentioned now is the conflict arrived because of preconceived ideas in your mind, not because she did anything wrong. So even if she had left and gone overseas, you would have had a virtual relationship to carry on with. But unfortunately, this is what happens. This is what happens, and it's a good example.
Yes.
So the secret is becoming aware of our differences, because if we are aware, we can mend the bond. Of course, the second ingredient is willingness. Okay, so if we become aware, that's great. If we are aware beforehand, we might be able to avoid it. If we become aware later and we are willing, and both parties or all parties are willing, then we could, the possibility is there to mend the bond.
Yes.
So we will touch on a tool that helps us to mend the bond, or even to avoid the breaking of relationships, and to get more out of life, you know. But we'll touch on one of those tools. Let's look at something you mentioned as well, reading into it. So my question is, what are you reading for? Remember, we are reading for something positive because we want hope, you know, we want hope. But we could also unconsciously be reading for self-sabotaging aspects, such as rejection, which you mentioned. So instead of receiving what the person is saying and just embracing this information, once you read for blame, you're going to find it. You know, in most cases, the other party, they just don't understand what you're blowing up about. Nobody blamed you. Where does it come from? Because they definitely didn't say it. And then thirdly, for worse. And in that example, you also mentioned that because we are reading for affirmations of worth. If our core script inside ourselves is not cemented in our self-worth, and if we have a question on it, we're going to look for that external affirmation. So take us through that. And the next point, check mindsets shaped by upbringing. The reading into it and the mindsets by upbringing, talk us through that.
Sometimes it just feels like a bottomless pit. It really is a battle in the mind. Everything that was on that screen now is, it's so me. The fact that there's a difference in the first place is immediately a problem. It's a problem. I've done something wrong. I am not worthy now of, it's actually really, really limiting. And, you know, sort of working through this helps you to understand that I need to get out of my mind. I need to step back and really just view the situation for what it is, you know. And it's as simple as, like you said it just now, it's a difference of opinion. It could be a good thing because it brings you to a decision that needs to be made or taken.